Okay, welcome to our New York Giants preservation meeting for tonight. Tonight is October 5th, 2023, with our guest speaker, Jeff Findley. Jeff contributed to this great book, The Team That Time Won't Forget. His contribution was about Bobby Thomson, and we're going to celebrate and honor Bobby Thomson because 72 years ago on Tuesday, the famed shot heard around the world, most famous baseball home run, probably baseball play in all of Major League Baseball history. So we're going to get to Jeff in a minute or two. Just some other things. Next week, we will have author James Elfers. James also contributed to the same book, and he's going to be discussing Sal Evars and the whole sign stealing scenario, or alleged sign stealing scenario. I don't want to cross Harvey. He's a lawyer and he needs to make sure that the right things are being said. And of course, the judge is here, so I don't want to cross him either. Alleged sign stealing scenario. A couple of other things. Some of you might know that I started to write a book, and a lot of the book has to do with this group, and also my becoming a Giant fan in 1969. So the book goes from 69 until the Gabe Kapler firing on Sunday, and hopefully, if everything goes right, I'm going to have it self-published, and maybe it'll be out by Thanksgiving or earlier than that. But the group has meant so much to me, and it's discussed in length in a chapter that I call the COVID years. So something to look forward to. I hope I know what the hell I'm doing to upload it to Amazon, and we will see what happens. But when I did write it, it wasn't laborious. It was actually, I had a great time doing it. So we shall see what happens. But enough of me tonight.
Gary,
yes.
Can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Will you be invited to your own Zoom chat?
I was thinking that I'd be interviewing myself. So, I'll wear one color on my face, blue, and one white, and I'll turn around, and which I actually did before.
I thought Norm is the designated interviewer when you're not able to interview.
We might have Norm do it then. So
that's right.
And you should be wearing orange on one side, Gary, and black on the other, not blue and white.
That's a good one. Without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Jeff Findley to the New York Giants Preservation Society. Jeff, welcome aboard, and thank you so much for giving up some of your time tonight.
A lot of pressure after hearing that pregame discussion, I tell you. I want to thank everybody for the invite, especially Gary, because I had some anxiety about this, and he assured me I'd be fine. And then he was nice enough to make sure there were no wild card games tonight, so that our attentions wouldn't be diverted. So I appreciate him doing that as well. I'll go through the quick stuff real quick about myself. I grew up in Eastern Iowa. I was born in '61, so obviously that was after this event happened. I know last week you had a Mets fan on here speaking, and my entrance to baseball as a 7-year-old was watching the Orioles win the first game of the World Series and coming down the steps of my grandma's house after watching on a 10-inch black and white TV celebrating that they were the world champs. So my father informed me that it was best of 7 and they lost the next 4 to the Mets. So I stuck with them anyway, but that's why I've been an Orioles fan all this time. I've been a Sabre member since 2009. I've contributed to 11 books. But this was actually the first story I wrote. So originally they published it, if you can see this, the first book that this story was published in was called There's Joy in Brave Land. And it was about the 57 Milwaukee Braves. Thomson was a member of that team part of the year. And then as Gary showed, the team that won't forget, the next year they asked to use the same bio. So that's how I got into this. But my dad was he was a big fan of baseball. He played, on the state championship team. He was a center fielder that won it. And I initially did this research for him because he loved that moment, the Bobby Thomson moment. And he was 8 years old when it happened, ironically, and so he was thrilled by that. And 2005, I'm going to show you this. He came out. He wrote a book with another lady called The Stumptown Kid, and this is it's basically kind of historical fiction about his life and growing up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where we're from. Stumptown was an area of the town where they had a lot of sandlot games and stuff. That's where Bill Fitch, that used to be the Boston Celtics and other teams' managers, grew up. So he knew him growing up, and he writes about basically a kid that was basically him that meets a Negro League baseball player that's on the run, and that was pretty successful. Won some young authors awards, but he was in the process of writing a second book when he passed, and he really didn't do the writing. This Carol Gorman did the writing, but it was his ideas, and he was writing about another kid that was trying to really perfect his aim as a pitcher, right? His control. Well, what he would do, he would practice throwing a quarter at a piggy bank 60 feet away. Well, the one day that he finally hit the slot in the piggy bank happened to coincide with the moment that Bobby Thomson hit the pitch for the home run. So that was kind of his tie-in to Thomson, because he loved that. He did meet Andy Pafko at a baseball tryout camp in 1964, and he credited him with showing him how to hold the big part of the seams in baseball to make the ball travel further. So he had that. And, he just was a fan. I will say he loved Willie Mays, but he was a Mantle guy. So I don't want to start a fight here to start the meeting, but he loved Mickey Mantle, wore number 7 on his jersey, all that. So we'll get to Thomson, and I'm not sure I have anything you guys don't already know, but he was born in Glasgow, Scotland. I think you guys know that. He died in Savannah, Georgia in 2010. I actually got married in Savannah, Georgia, second marriage in 2008, and I had planned to go down and try and meet him in person, because I had kind of started thinking about this idea, and then he died before my next trip down there. But he just seemed like an interesting guy, and from everything I read, he never turned a person away. He was very friendly, and so I was disappointed that I couldn't include any of his sentiments in this write-up. I think you guys know his Giants career was 46 to 53, and then he came back in 57. He was with the Braves in between that time, and he ended his career with the Cubs for a couple of years, and the Red Sox and Orioles his last season, and that was pretty brief. I don't know if you guys know this, but Thomson, he homered off Ralph Branca 4 times, 3 of them that year, and I think 1 just a few days before, if I remember right. So, I've read a little bit about that. I don't want to belabor with all the stats you guys probably already know, but it's interesting. So what I did is I took some snips from the biography to talk about him. What I think is interesting about Bobby Thomson is not his playing career, but the fact that, and Mike Lupica wrote a column in '98 about the fact that, that one moment in time, which they say is the greatest moment ever in baseball, greatest call ever, really defined his whole career and notoriety. He has a quote here. He said, "It wasn't just me," Thomson told Lupica. "It was everything. It was New York. It was the Giants versus the Dodgers. It was the way we'd come from so far behind. It was the fact that we came from behind that day in the 9th. It was 8 teams instead of all the ones we have now. It was the World Series on the line. You tell me my home run is safe today, and maybe you're right. Sometimes it's like the ball never came down." So, he recognized what a moment that was for him. And, he talked about it many times. I think you probably all know that he would later in life would appear a lot with Branca for, get-togethers, autograph signing, whatever. In his own words, he said, "I had a decent major league career, but if I hadn't been in the right place at the right time in the Polo Grounds, batting against Branca at precisely 3:58 on a Wednesday afternoon, October 3rd, 1951, I would have played my 15 seasons in the major leagues and then vanished from sight and memory, never to be heard from again." So he was pretty self-aware, and that's something else I appreciated. And so now you guys were all talking a little bit about the Echoing Green that came out, and there's in part of my research, there was a big Wall Street Journal article in 2001 that talked about the 51 comeback and talked about the elaborate scene stealing scheme and stuff. And I don't know if I believe it or not, but it sounds like he's validated that with some of you in person. And I have read as well that he didn't actually take the sign. So, I guess that's a whole nother discussion, but I played baseball through college, and I played fast pitch softball at the highest level. And I can tell you that even if you know something's coming, that doesn't mean you can hit it. So, I like to give credit where credit's due and understand how difficult that would be. So in 54, after all that happened, of course, the Giants needed pitching, so they traded him to the Braves for Sam Calderon, pitcher, or traded him with Sam Calderon to pitcher Johnny Antibelli, infielder Billy Klaus, pitcher Don Little, and catcher Ebba St. Clair. And there's a quote that I thought was kind of cool with him. And he said, somebody asked him, "How do you like it?" And he said, "Why, great. What ball player wouldn't like to be traded to a club that everybody considers a red hot pennant contender? Naturally, I do feel sorry having to leave New York. However, it's part of baseball to be traded. And this switch, I think, will do me a lot of good. It was tough keeping up one spirit with things breaking so badly for the Giants last year." So you guys are Giants fans. I suppose that things went downhill in 53, apparently. Watching for nods, but didn't sound like they had a great season and or in 54. So
Willie came back in 54.
Say that again, Indy.
Willie Mays came back in 54.
Yeah, right. Because he was off at the war, right? Yeah. So at any rate, he went to the Milwaukee Braves, played there 3 years. It's ironic after his earlier quote that he wasn't there for the World Series. He'd been traded back to the Giants. But one thing that I thought was really interesting is because he had hurt himself early in that season, it allowed Hank Aaron to the starting lineup. So think about that, a person that's replaced in the outfielder for two different teams by Willie Mays and Hank Aaron. It really resonates about his place in history. Then they talked about the trades in 57. So we really talked about the rest of his years. Talked about Thomson declined. He declined. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but in my research, I found from a David Henderson article, he used to write Sport of the Times in the New York Times, said Thomson declined to attend the 50th anniversary festivities of the historic home run at a Dodgers-Giants game in San Francisco, mostly in respect for Branca. They were going to have Ralph and me ride around in the cart. He said Ralph doesn't need that. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but again, sounds like a really self-assuming guy. And, from afar, and like I said, I grew up in the Midwest. I don't live in the either coast where some of you do. He just resonates to me as a stand-up guy, that had probably a mediocre career, but he had that one moment. I've always questioned whether that moment. What's that? Oh, sorry. I've always questioned why that moment was thought of higher than Mazeroski's home run and, to win the World Series with Pittsburgh. But this one seems to win all the polls. Maybe it was the call, the Giants win the pennant. Maybe it was the rally because they came back from 3 runs down in the 9th. Maybe it was the rally for the divisional title or the league title, actually, at that time. But he talks about it at the end of his career. His quote was, "Times were different then," Thomson said. "I had to work in the off season. And when I retired, I was married, had a child, and there were no offers for jobs in baseball as a coach or a scout. So he had to get a job, and he worked as a sales executive for Westvaco Paper Company. And he said he wanted to be responsible, stay home with his wife and daughter, live a normal life. And so he settled in Wattsburg, New Jersey. I don't know where that is exactly, if it's close to the city or where it is. But
it's about 30 miles west of New York City.
Okay, so it's in the vicinity.
Washington, New Jersey. Yeah.
Gotcha. He added another daughter and son to the family. Elaine, his wife of 40 years, died in 1993, and I think probably you all heard about his son Bobby Jr. died suddenly the same year on Father's Day from a rare virus. So he had some unforgiving activities there. Another key quote he had before we get to the writings is that people have asked me if I resent the fact that the 51 homer is all I'm remembered for, Thomson told the Scotsman in 2003. What I say is I feel fortunate that I had one moment in the sun. It's nice to be remembered, and so many people remember where they were when they heard that game on the radio. I don't know, does anybody in this group remember that? Is anybody old enough? I would say you had to be 78 to 80 to remember that moment, probably.
I saw it on TV.
Did you live?
I got home it was in 8th grade. I got home for the 8th inning. I saw
That's
the eighth
terrific.
inning.
Were you shocked?
I saw it also.
I saw it also.
Andy, how could you have seen it? Aren't you like 40?
I'm that old.
Okay.
So
And
what,
I'm 80.
Everybody else was a Dodgers fan.
well, I kind of planned this to be collaborative, but I'm kind of interesting, what was your reaction? Were you old enough to appreciate it? Were you?
My greatest moment.
We thought, again, it was terribly unfair that whoever won the playoff, if it was the Giants or the Dodgers, they had to go into the World Series the next day with the Yankees without a day off to unwind. Still, though, the Giants won the first and third games of the World Series, and I was at Game 3 with my dad. And then next Saturday, I was bar mitzvah.
Frank, you need to tell us how you get your hat to talk. That's better.
Okay.
That's good.
Is that better?
That's much better. No.
You were just
bow down. We couldn't see your face.
Well, I'll tell you why I should know better. In order to use my computer equipment, I have to look into the keyboard. I shouldn't do that. Also, Bobby Thomson missed 2 World Series years when he was traded from the Giants to the Braves. No,
Right.
from the Giants to the Braves. He missed the World Series that year, and then when he was traded from the Braves back to the Giants, he missed the Braves World Series.
yes, bad luck. Hey, Martin's got his hand up. He has a question.
I think his hand's been up for a while.
Oh, that's it. Okay. I didn't want to ignore him. So, again, with this group, what I thought was interesting later on in life was all the writings that happened. So Pavko at the Wall, as we talked about a little bit ago, and the one that was before that, I read most of this. It was repetitious to me after doing all the research. But it's still interesting that moment spawned that book. The Echoing Green sounds like pretty much everybody's a believer that they were doing that, or maybe it's been proven that the Giants were relaying signs. But it sounds like, I think, Gary, you said earlier that we asked him the question.
Yep.
And he denied getting the sign. So
Unequivocally asked him, he said, "No, I did not take the sign."
okay.
And I will say that upon meeting him, here I was, an adult, but, a baseball icon. The one word I would use to describe him was he was very, very humble.
Yeah.
And unassuming, and just, like you said, Jeff, I think he had a very good career, but he had his moment in the sun, and what a
Right.
moment that people are still talking about. And then I got you to speak about something that occurred 72 years ago.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and like you said, I don't know what Russ Hodges, what we have to give him credit for, because his call was so iconic too. But to me, it was just the moment. My dad always talked about this, and he said it's like, it was all like in slow motion when they came to that inning. Everybody was resolved that the game was over, and then the injury happened, and they got the guys on base, and they come into the his at bat, and he tomahawks that second pitch, and there's so many variables that people haven't discussed, the makeup of the Polo Grounds with that short left field wall, and things of that nature. But there wasn't any doubt. It was pretty much, from what I've seen on video, a line drive. So
James,
All
why don't you just my 2 cents? Why don't you conclude whatever it is you
Okay.
want to finish, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Awesome. Got a
How does
couple
that
more
sound?
Got a couple more things here. Miracle Ball. Have you all read the book Miracle Ball? I thought that was a fascinating account of what happened to the ball. I don't know if it's true, but it was very interesting to read. And I think it concluded, it's been a while since I read it, but it concluded with a nun found it, and it kind of disappeared with her life. But it would sure be nice to have that in Cooperstown. So that was another full book that spawned from that moment, and basically they talk about that being a sports story for the ages. And I I don't know if Beagle, the guy that wrote it, if he ever made a film, because he was doing that for a documentary film at the time, and I don't know if he did, if anybody watched it. But I read the book, it was given to me. So, but the final thing I had to talk about was I'm a big sports writing fan. And of course, Red Smith, I'm actually reading a bio about Red Smith right now, but the story, The Miracle of Coogan's Bluff, his account of the game. And, this goes back 72 years. I don't know if you guys heard it, but I'm going to read you the conclusion, the last four paragraphs. He said, so it was the Dodgers ball game, 4-1, and the Dodgers pennant. So all right, better get started and beat the crowd home. That stuff in the ninth inning, that didn't mean anything. A single by Al Dark, a single by Don Miller, Irving's pop-up, Lockman's one-run double. Now the corniest possible sort of Hollywood schmaltz. Stretch Bears plodding away with an injured Mueller between them, symbolic of the Giants themselves. There went Newcomb, and here come Ralph Branca. Who's at bat? Thomson again? He beat Branca with a home run the other day. Would Charlie Dreesen, I don't know if you guys say Dreesen or Dressen, would Charlie Dressen order him walked, putting the winning run on base to pitch to the dead-end kids at the bottom of the batting order? No, Branca's first pitch was a called strike. The second pitch, well, when Thomson reached the first base, he turned and looked towards the left field stands. Then he started jumping straight in the air again and again. Then he trotted around the bases, taking his time. Ralph Branca turned and started for the clubhouse. The number on his uniform looked huge, 13. I just thought that was an incredible recap of the game with the 13 mentioned and stuff. And it just kind of summed it all up for me that, he was just a bad luck bear that day. So Gary, that's kind of, I didn't know how long to talk. That's kind of the highlights I had, but happy to discuss anything anybody wants to talk about.
That was, Jeff, that was terrific. I'm going to start with a couple of comments. First of all, my condolences to you on the passing of Brooks Robinson.
Thank you.
And
you're my Brown shirt today, so.
Speaking for myself, I hope you get to celebrate a world championship this year. The funny thing about the baseball, we have some giant royalty. He's not here tonight, but Ed Logan Jr. was Eddie Logan Sr.'s son, who was the clubhouse man. And you talked about, the baseball that the nun had.
Right.
Ed relayed a story to us that somebody from the Giants said that he brought the ball to Ed Logan Sr. and said, this is the actual home run ball that Bobby Thomson hit. And then Ed Logan Sr. looked at him and said, put it in the corner with the other 30 that are over there. So
really,
a lot of people claim that they had the ball, and who knows really who does have the ball. But I'm so glad that you, of course, he'd be included in the book you contributed to. And I read what you wrote. It was very, very well done. And we appreciate you coming in talking about it tonight.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm actually not a writer, guys. I'm an information security consultant at State Farm's corporate office. So I do boring stuff with technology, but baseball is my savior. It keeps me, my creative juices flowing.
All right. So if Martin, if your hand's been up there, if you want to unmute and ask a question, I'll give you a few seconds. If not, I'm going to go to Harvey.
Put me online.
You got it, Frank. All right. We're going to go Harvey, Howard, Renee, and then Frank. Harvey, you are first up.
Okay, I want to try to show you this picture off my iPhone. This is going to be a mess because I don't know how to do it.
That's good.
That's good.
It's good.
Pull it back
Right
a
there.
little.
Right
Pull
there.
it back a little. That's it
There
right
you go.
there.
Bobby obviously in the middle, Helen in the red dress, obviously, and me, I'm the shrimp on the other side. That was in 1995, and I want to just do three brief recollections. That was 1995 at this dinner. I'm not going to give you the whole discussion of the dinner, but Bobby was like me, a hockey fan, and the Rangers had won the Stanley Cup after a 50 some odd year period where they didn't. So Bobby and I and Bill and Kathy, that's Bill's wife, and we were all talking. And Bobby was talking about the fact that he had played for the Cubs and he had played for the Red Sox. And he spoke glowingly of his time in Boston. And he said, I hope they win a pennant soon, because they're nice people, but they haven't won in such a long time. And that's when I piped in and I said, oh, well, that's like the Rangers, Bobby. They hadn't won since 1940. So Bobby starts to tell us that he's a Rangers fan. And there was a game in the semifinals where it was the New Jersey Devils had tied it up with 7 seconds to go. And I said to Bobby, I said, here we are, the guy with the greatest home run in baseball history, and I'm talking hockey with Bobby Thomson. So I said, what'd you think when the Devils scored that goal to tie it up with 7 seconds? And Bobby Thomson related the fact that he couldn't watch the overtime. He was so nervous that he paced in his garden, and we had visited his house. He had a beautiful garden. And here was Bobby Thomson, arguably with the most famous moment in certainly New York sports history, and he could not watch the overtime. He kept walking back and forth. He told me he would stick his head in to see if they were still playing, because he just couldn't watch the overtime. I thought that was mesmerizing. Bobby Thomson also discussed his trade for Johnny Antonelli. And the way he discussed it, he said he was proud that he was traded for a good pitcher, a very good pitcher. That was Johnny Antonelli. And he was proud of the fact that Johnny helped the Giants. Johnny won, I think, 23. The judge will help me on this, Jim. He won 23 games in 54. And so Bobby was he was sorry to be traded from the Giants, but they got value for him. They got very good value. They won the World Series with him. And the last little vignette was, I can't remember exactly when the year was, but it's in the 2000s. I've mentioned Bill Murphy. He's a dear friend. And Bill had been nominated by President Bush to be a federal judge. And they had a big dinner for him. It was attended by over 400 people on Staten Island. And Bill had a big family, and he was seated at a table. So Billy called me up. He says, here's your assignment, Weinberg. You and Helen are going to sit with Bobby Thomson, which was great. And throughout the evening, which was attended by all the dignitaries of the law enforcement world in particular, kept coming up to the table where Bobby and me and Helen were seated, because they wanted to meet Bobby, not me. Not me. That's the low guy on the totem pole. But I knew who these people were, and I would introduce them to Bobby. And at one point, Bobby says to me and Helen, he says, wow, Bill is a pretty important guy. Look at all these people that have come here. And I said, Bobby, let me explain something to you. There are a lot of judges, district attorneys, and all sorts of lawyers in this room, but there's only one guy who ever stepped foot on a Major League Baseball field, and that one guy hit the home run that nobody will ever forget. And Bobby looked at me and just got back to eating his cake. Gary used all the right adjectives. I would add one more. He was genuine. Thanks for coming and giving us the opportunity to relive again that home run, and Bobby Thomson.
And Antonelli did win 21 games, and I just looked it up while you were talking. So
he won how many games?
21-7 in 1954.
Well, that helped him win the pennant, and then the World Series. Bobby, that's who Bobby was traded for. Yep. Absolutely.
James, before I turn it over to Howard, I had one quick question for you. You know, I've seen countless pictures of Thomson and Branca. You know, Branca choking him and them singing the song together. You know, what really made the moment was Russ Hodges' call, of course. I really have never seen really a picture or two of Hodges and Thomson. Do you recollect seeing any? Uh-oh. There we go. Do you recollect seeing any Jeff?
Oh, I don't, but I'm looking right now while you talk. Sorry, I didn't know you were directing that at me. I don't. I led that article with the call, to try to pull people in, but I don't recall seeing those together. But I've definitely seen that choking picture you referenced. So I'll do some looking too. So while we're answering
Got it.
questions.
Hey, Norm, I just got notification that the connection was unstable. So just be on the lookout to continue. Howard, you are
Okay,
up.
Gary.
Yeah, very good presentation. I wasn't born yet, but my father, as everybody here knows, was a big fan. I don't know how well you could see this. It's a gold-plated
Yep.
something dish from old photographs of what happened that day, of course. And I got Thomson and Branca to autograph it.
That's
And I was
great.
actually thinking of putting this into my father's casket at the very end, but I know he probably would have yelled at me. So we had also pictures of us instead of Thomson and Branca. I met him a few times. I met him about 5 times. I got his autograph about 5 times. And the first time we met was actually, he came to my little tiny hometown of Sayreville, New Jersey. I'm a former New Yorker, by the way, but I was living in New Jersey. I think it was in the 90s, early 90s. He was alone. He wasn't with Branca, and it was in an old shuttered Toys R Us store, I remember. And they cleaned it up and they got it ready for Thomson. It still looked pretty bare. It was one table, Thomson, not a hell of a lot of people. But I had a few minutes with him. And as everybody knows, he was a very nice, very humble guy. But he did give me a crazy look when I asked him about one thing. I said, the day after the home run, you were back playing baseball again. You were in the World Series at Yankee Stadium for the game 1 of the series. The very next day, as everybody might know here, they didn't have an off day. They went right from the Polo Grounds on October 3rd to Yankee Stadium across the river on October 4th. And I asked him, it must have been somewhat of a letdown after the excitement, and you haven't even had time to digest it, and now you're out there playing again. And he looked at me like, and I wasn't a kid anymore, but he said, basically, kid, it's the World Series. It's Yankee Stadium. It's the house that Ruth built. It's Mays against Mantle. Of course, I'm just as excited as I was yesterday. So, but he was just kidding around. He was a very nice man, and it was a pleasure to meet him. As I said, I have his autograph about 5 different times floating around my house somewhere on the plate. I have a couple of books on October 3rd, and I have a book on the history of Giants memorabilia, which he autographed, along with some really old timers from the 1940s. Some of them I can't remember their names even. So I'm glad I got to meet him, and he did live up in Watchung, which was about a 20-minute ride up the Garden State Parkway from where I happen to live now. But the fact that he came to my little town, which is still a little nothing all these years later, was really great. So thanks again for the presentation, and you brought back memories, really more my father, because he was raving for my entire life about that day, because I wasn't yet born. So thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Howard. Renee, you are up.
Thank you. Great presentation. Thank you. For me, I was very young, so hearing stories from my mom, family members, people from the neighborhood, the likes, dislikes of the moment, Dodger fans, Giant fans, it was a lot of that. But that contents from them. So when the anniversary always happened year after year, I would always think of those stories. So as I got older, found Giants Historical Society, people from that period, asking them stories, listening to them, the moment, everything, absorbed all of that. I was fortunate for almost 18, 19 years to be working at HBO and finding out that the sports department is doing a documentary, A Shot Heard Around the World. I was fired up, couldn't wait, wanted to find out more information, trying to not necessarily about the outcome of the documentary, but really trying to get close to when they were going to interview Bobby Thomson. Never got a chance to get that. But I remember when it was released earlier to the group before it was going to air officially. And I was fortunate to sit next to some people that were behind the scenes. So the interviews of Bobby Thomson of that docu, what they told me, that's him, soft spoken, warm-hearted guy. That's him. That's what you're getting from him. And when you mention, like what brought aside from the historical moment of the home run, there's a lot of little things that went on that made that moment great. Home run, absolutely. Call accentuates the moment. The sign stealing that came in. I mean, Monty Irvin says in the documentary, some of us used it, some of us didn't. When they played in the Polo Grounds, they certainly didn't do it. Bobby Thomson said, no way. Duke Snyder even said, you know what, even if he knew it, you still got to hit it. I was a firm believer in that big time. I mean, anybody could tell you what you're throwing, but if the guy's got something on it, I don't know if you could actually hit it out. But then, then the push, from 13 games out. But then the most important thing that I think than any other documentary that I've ever seen, the fans, the passion of the New York and Giant fan, Dodger and Giant fans. In that documentary, I got more of what my family was going through, listening to those stories about the hated Dodgers and the hated Giants. That really encompassed everything about that 51 year, what made that season so special. That's my feelings about the whole thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Renee. You need a tissue?
That was last week,
No.
right? I watched that. You talked about a couple of them. I just want to say this real quick. So when I visualized, I've watched that 100 times, right, or more. The little skip around first base too, where that was iconic to me. And then, of course, DeRocher mugging him when he rounds third and basically walking him all the way to home plate, it seemed like. So, yeah, it's just such a great memory, the excitement of that.
And you know what, real quickly, you just reminded me, I did not realize this, but I found this out years later. When Russ Hodges went crazy, apparently nobody else goes crazy historically doing broadcasts. Well, so his excitement, his jubilance added to everything that went on in that, and the rest is history, the excitement of that moment.
The only thing that in my lifetime that I can equate to that, and I wasn't invested as a fan, but was Kid Gibson's home run in the '88 World Series. But that one, I was just stunned, so I wasn't a fan of the Dodgers, so I wasn't jumping up and down. I was just stunned.
Well, let me tell you a quick story about that. I was working at Madison Square Garden. The Knicks had just won. I'm driving. I'm listening on the radio. That I'm not a Dodger fan because of my family, the history, Giants, and all that stuff. When he hit the home run, I'm on Queens Boulevard. I turned off and parked, screaming at the radio. I come home. My wife is going, you're an hour and a half late, something like that. What's wrong with you? What happened? And he goes, so-and-so hit the home run. I was like really mad. I was like, I lost it in the car. I'm listening to the whole thing. I'm fuming. And now I'm not even driving fast. I'm just driving slow. So shocked that what was about to happen happened. So yeah, that's
Ben Scully Ben Scully's call that's on YouTube, and it's great because he doesn't say anything for like 5 minutes. He just lets the audience, So
well, you know what? That it's not only his call, but I forgot the radio call. Who made that? That's another great call too.
Yep.
Thank you, Renee.
And
Frank Lewis, and then Kim Rupert. Frank, you're up.
Now, this has been discussed many times. Tell me if this is correct. That the video that we see of the home run was not from the telecast. It was from a movie, movie newsreel. Newsreels are shown in movie theaters, and that there was no such thing as videotape, although there was such thing as kineoscopes of TV with a camera on the TV screen, and that the Russ Hodges description was not recorded. They found some guy, and they gave him a pittance. They gave him a small amount of money for something which is worth millions. Is that all correct?
Yes, I believe that's true, Frank.
And again, I don't want to take anybody's time. I've discussed this with Gary many times. I still want to find out about Ebba St. Clair's 1954 bankruptcy proceeding. But
maybe we'll work on getting somebody to speak about that. Thanks, Frank.
Someone's got to go to the federal court in Albany to see if they still have the 1954 record as to whether his bankruptcy creditors were allowed to attach his partial World Series share.
Gotcha. Thanks, Frank. Kim, you are up. Nice to see you.
Yeah, thank you. Hey guys, that was a great presentation and always really fun to hear things. My mom never liked to talk to anybody. She was very quiet and reserved, but they asked to interview her one time about the home run. And so she said, you know, the mood was kind of somber in the box. Not really somber, but just quiet. And Daddy, she called him Daddy, had gone down with 2 outs, was on his way to the clubhouse to congratulate the guys and tell them, you know, great season. And so he missed the home run.
Oh, wow.
And she said, of course, he was very happy, but didn't get to see the home run.
Great.
And then I went to, even though I grew up in LA and obviously a Giants fan, had a lot of respect for the Dodgers. So I actually went to Dodgers fantasy camp when Duke Snyder was there, Ralph Branco was there, Mr. Erskine. And I'm not sure Mr. Branco was very happy that I was there. I wasn't there to mock him or anything. I just went there because, you know, that was a team that we competed against all the time. And it was just so cool to be in Vero, where all of the, you know, Koufax, Drysdale, Maury Wills, but all of the guys were really super to me, except for Mr. Branca, who kind of, I'm not sure what he expected from me, but anyway, my 2 cents.
Jeff, if you don't know, Kim is the granddaughter of Horace Stoneham. So that's where she
I gathered there was some relationship there. So,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just tell
anybody else
something.
have any questions or comments for Jeff?
She mentioned Erskine. I think I just heard something the other day. He's one of the oldest living still, right?
Yep.
And the last living Dodger.
Last one.
Yeah.
Mr. Rothschild.
So sorry I'm late. We're at a doctor's office in Scottsdale, so I missed the presentation, but I'll certainly watch it. You taped it, Gary, right?
Yeah, what were you doing, laundry?
No, but that story is very similar, right?
Yes, it was.
What Harvey was telling about Bobby Thomson. Gary, you might remember Logan and Branca. We got pictures with the 2 of them. Ed
Yes.
Jr., right? In Cooperstown. That was kind of an interesting reuniting of 2 guys. One was the son of the dad in the clubhouse, and the other one was, you know, the famous pitcher. Erskine is going to be 97.
Steve, I was relaying to Jeff the story about Logan's father in the clubhouse when people would bring balls saying it was a Thomson ball, and he said, put it with these 40 other or 30 other ones.
And
that's a great story.
Like the bats. That's how he makes some extra money. Yeah, Erskine's going to be 97. He's the last one left from 51, along with Mays is the last one for the Giants. Gary got Erskine to do it. It wasn't quite a Zoom call, but it was a call, and we spent a good hour and 20 minutes talking to Carl Erskine, and he verified something that we thought was a rumor, at least I did, that Duke Snyder was quoted as saying, "We hate the Giants so much, we even hate Halloween." They were roommates, and Erskine, I remember Erskine verified it. I don't know if it was in the presentation, but I'm certainly not going to count Bobby Thomson's money. He did very well in the memorabilia round with Branca, but he lost 2 World Series shares. Was that mentioned?
Yeah,
it was
mentioned by the crowd here, yes.
54, and then the Braves traded him back to New York in 57, so he lost out on the money from the Braves. Just one last quick story. I worked at the Riverdale YMHA for 4 years in the early 90s, and I was able to get a baseball card store upstate that wanted to do card shows once a month. And of course, he paid rent to the building, which was great, because when you work at a place like that, fundraising is what it's all about. So the first show he did, he said, I'm going to do it big. I'm going to probably get 15 or 20 deals. I'm going to try to get a ball player. The options are Phil Rizzuto or Bobby Thomson. Who would you like? So, you know, there wasn't much thought. I said, well, let's get Bobby Thomson. A guy in my building worked for Mirage. Some of you might have those jackets. There's a 27 Yankee, 55 Brooklyn, and a 51 Giants jacket, which I have. Actually, I had 2 of them. And Bobby Thomson, you know, like you and I walked downstairs. He was supposed to come at 12, quarter to 12. I walked downstairs outside to the parking lot, and there he is, big as life. And he was 68 at the time, walking towards me. And I says, Mr. Thomson, where's your car? Oh, no, I don't need a car. I took a bus and a train to get here. And then I spent a good 45 minutes sitting with him. So he had signed things. We talked about everything from A to Z in baseball. And then we presented him with a jacket, 51 Giants, a beautiful jacket, reversible, with the box score of the game and everything. And I remember his first words, "Why are you giving me this?" And we said, you know what, you earned it. And he took the jacket, he signed autographs all day. He obviously made a couple of grand, but what a humble human being. And that's all we can say. Again, I'm sorry I missed the live presentation, but I'm sure it was great. Thank you so much.
I'm happy you contributed to that story. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have a question or comment for Jeff? Jeff, I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you a question, then I'll let Harvey. So you're a big
I don't want to hog the show, but there was one other story, that dinner on Staten Island in 1995. I don't remember how we got to discussing Bobby Thomson's appearances on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Correct.
With Ralph Branca, where they sang a version of "Because of You," where the baseball writers had written new lyrics. And Bobby sang that song at that dinner. A cappella, there was no band.
He had a nice voice.
And we were mesmerized. And Helen, who always had a great comment, gives me the elbow and says, "How come you didn't bring a tape recorder?" but he had a great voice.
Very good voice.
And a great sense of humor. And I would just add to that, I got a million more, but we don't have the time.
So Jeff, I'm going to ask you a non-Bobby Thomson question.
Okay.
Since you're a big Orioles fan,
Oh.
how the hell could you let John Miller slip out of your hands and come to us? Because we love him to
Great question.
To the dearest, and Max here. I don't know if you know this, Jeff, but earlier in the year, we took a walk around the Polo Grounds, and lo and behold, John Miller calls me and wants to go on the walk with us. And he came with it. He joined about 20 of the Preservation Society members. What a delightful guy. And your loss was our incredible game.
Well, let me answer your question with a question. Have you ever heard anybody brag about the management of the Baltimore Orioles organization?
Well, you got a lot to be proud of now, because I am very envious of your
farm. Oh, they've got some youth, don't they? I mean, I love it. And one thing I didn't tell you, that they were 69 they lost, 70 they won, 71 they lost, 83 they won. Well, if you guys remember the name Mike Boddicker, he won a game or two in the playoffs and won one. So he's from Norway, Iowa, a little hamlet about 30 miles from where I grew up. And he's 4 years older, I think. So when I was a senior in high school, Iowa's recruited me to play baseball, and I would go up there in the winter and I would get to catch him in the cage because he'd be back working out. He was in the minor leagues. So, that just reinforced my Orioles connection there too.
Hold on one second.
And now the third will be
getting rid of this person. Hold on. There we go. Go ahead, Jeff. I'm sorry.
No, I just couldn't hear this question, whoever's speaking.
No, it was about John Miller still. Mars.
Yeah. I mean, okay, I gotcha. No, I don't have an answer for you on that.
Did you enjoy him as much as we did?
Enjoy the fact that they gave him to the Giants?
No, enjoyed listening to him as a young adult growing up.
Oh yeah, I did. Isn't he the one that got caught urinating too in the alley or whatever?
No,
I don't think that's him.
Okay,
No.
different one. Okay, but yeah, like I said, it's hard to be a fan of the Orioles in the Midwest because you don't get the news. I'm just inundated with Cub Cardinal stuff, and I don't really care for either one of them. But yeah, in fact, I have to subscribe to the Baltimore Sun just to kind of keep up on things. So,
well, listen, thank you so much for spending your time with us tonight. Let's give it up for Jeff Findley.
well, you guys are tremendous. Like I said, I've watched some of these on video, and I'm envious that you guys have this little fraternity of people that are such good fans. So
Thank
keep
you.
it up.
And again, Jeff, best way to get this is probably Amazon, correct?
Yeah. I also, when I sent you those talking points, there's another link in there that it might be cheaper, but I don't know if you have to be a Sabre member or not, because it's like $5.99 now for one of those. So you can check that out and see.
That's great.
I think they self-publish it through a company called Create Space now, but I don't know if you have to be a Sabre member to get to it.
Gotcha. Well, listen, don't be a stranger. If any guests we have interest you, please hop aboard, okay?
Will do, because I really enjoy your conversations.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Give it up for Jeff one more time.
Take care.
All right, we will meet next week again with James Elfers, who will be discussing from the same book, Sal Evars and the sign stealing scenario. Should be very interesting. Until next Thursday, bid you adieu. I will hang around. I'm sure a lot of you want to talk Giants baseball. So let me just stop the recording right here.